What's up, y'all? This is Bo Beach. This is our first ever video podcast called Free Speech with Bo Beach. The concept is Nashville, a week in review, where we're going to quickly summarize and discuss everything you want to know about Nashville commercial real estate, which is the business I'm in, politics, culture, and sports. So we're going to give you a number of topics that we think you'll find interesting and entertaining. And I will tell you, this being the first episode, we've got some bigger things planned, but as an entrepreneur, uh, you know, we get started and we iterate and we make improvements as we go. So if you follow along, you'll see we're improving the offering. We'll make it a little fancier as we go. And I think you'll enjoy it. So I appreciate you tuning in. Let's get into our first story in the commercial real estate space, right? So I am a commercial real estate broker here in Nashville. I follow the commercial real estate space very closely. And one of the biggest stories ever in Nashville in the commercial real estate space is Oracle. And it seems to me that most folks have not really wrapped their mind around the magnitude of the Oracle deal. So I want to talk to you a little bit about that today, right? So Oracle is going to build a office campus across the river from Germantown on what's called the East Bank, right? What you probably don't know is they just very recently, Larry Ellison, the chairman of Oracle and one of the OGs of American business, a really pretty cool dude, just announced that what they're building in Nashville is actually going to be their world headquarters. So for many years, they were headquartered in Silicon Valley. More recently, they moved to Texas, and their location here in Nashville will soon serve as their world headquarters. Now, who is Oracle, right? So many consumers don't really interact with Oracle on a day-to-day basis like they would Meta or Alphabet, which is Google. Oracle does a lot of the work behind the scenes, powering a lot of that stuff. They're the third largest software company in the entire world. They're one of the 30 largest publicly traded companies in the world. And what they've agreed to do here in Nashville is they've agreed to generate up to 8,500 jobs, which is a huge number, and make a total investment of $1.35 billion. So what Oracle has done for Nashville is going to be transformational, right? And they've already acquired 70 acres on the East Bank at a total cost of, get this, for the land now, this without any improvements. It's actually worse than that. So it's land full of buildings that need to be demolished at a high cost. So $277 million for 70 acres on the river in the East Bank, mostly covered by large industrial buildings at this time. The only company in Nashville bigger than Oracle is HCA Healthcare. And the reason that Oracle has chosen Nashville, two reasons, right? Number one, Oracle's really kind of pivoting into the healthcare space and is going to kind of strategically focus itself on healthcare going forward. They've chosen Nashville for that reason. But the second reason is they wanted to choose a place where their employees actually wanted to be, live, and raise families. They're currently leasing 100,000 square feet temporarily until their campus is built. They've already got 722 employees. Another interesting fact about Oracle is Larry Ellison is describing their 70-acre development, right, as a park with buildings in it, right? And, I've never heard anyone say that before. So I thought that was very interesting. They've also hired the architects that designed Apple's iconic circular headquarters. So I don't know if you've seen Apple's new headquarters in Silicon Valley, but it's this giant circular ring, and inside that ring is a park. So very, very interesting design. Within Oracle's campus, they're obviously planning offices. They're planning a hotel, a health clinic, which is interesting, a concert venue, a lake. So you're already on the river. They're adding a lake with a floating stage. So these are all very, very interesting ideas. So what they're doing, Oracle's campus is really going to be a treasure for the Nashville area. And I don't think people really quite get it yet. They know it's a big deal. They don't know how big of a deal it is. Now, to incentivize Oracle to move to our great city, the government, the local government, and the state government has offered up to $175 million of incentives. The way that they structure that is basically they're just giving them a 50% discount on their property taxes, right? So that's a very good deal for the community. So they're going to save 50% on property taxes until they get to that $175 million mark, or it's going to run out at the end of 25 years. My guess is it's going to run out at the end of 25 years. It's hard for me to believe they're going to get to $175 million saving 50% of property taxes. Property taxes, while they've gone up in Nashville recently, uh, uh, compared to its peer cities, are still very low. So that's what I wanted to talk to you all about with the Oracle deal. Perhaps we'll expand on that in future weeks. Let's move to another story. So another story that came out this week is this idea that the top places to live in Tennessee were released by a group called niche.com. So, these come out all the time, but nevertheless, I think they're pretty interesting. So if you had to guess, the top community in Tennessee in which to live, so it's either a suburb or a neighborhood within a city. This is how they measured it. 7 out of the top 10 places to live are in Middle Tennessee. The number 1 place to live is in Middle Tennessee. And if you had to guess, I bet you wouldn't guess. Number 1 place to live in Middle Tennessee, according to niche.com, Nolensville, which I'm not sure I'm buying this one, guys. I'm not sure I'm buying it. Number 2 is Brentwood. That's much more believable to me. I'll tell you, my vote would be Franklin. That's where we chose to live. When we were really choosing where we wanted to live, it came down to Brentwood and Franklin. We chose Franklin because it's a little bit more close knit. The houses are closer together. There's more sidewalks. There's more opportunities for children to play with other children. And when we decided to build a home, we wanted it to be a place that was walkable, where our children could go outside and find other children to play with. That's harder to do in Brentwood, so that's why we chose Franklin. So to say that Nolensville is on this list in front of Franklin, frankly, is a little bit shocking to me. I've done a lot of business in Nolensville. I have some issues with Nolensville, right? So Nolensville has one road that is always busy, right? But more than that, recently I was working on a $25 million land sale that, if the zoning would have been approved by the municipality there in Nolensville, would have been the biggest mixed-use project in the history of that community. And Nolensville, in their infinite wisdom, did everything they could to kill that deal, and they ultimately did. So, Nolensville historically has wanted to be Franklin, right? But when it had a chance to be, at least the people in power there at the municipal level, which, historically Nolensville has been considered dysfunctional at the municipal level, right? So if you're in the commercial real estate business, you kind of know to stay away from Nolensville. They're hard to deal with, right? Which they proved when they killed my $25 million deal. It was a huge deal. We had like 6 or 7 different landowners. It was an assemblage, so we had all these different landowners participating in this deal. The deal just came down to Nolensville approving zoning so they could develop it the way that it needed to be developed, and Nolensville was an absolute nightmare to deal with. So perhaps I'm a little bit jaded from that experience. I'm not a huge Nolensville fan. Historically, Nolensville was in demand because it was a less expensive place to live than Franklin, right? So you could get more for your money in Nolensville, and that would justify kind of the drive out there. I'm told, I'm not in the residential real estate business and I don't care too much about it. I'm told that the pricing of the homes in Nolensville are kind of mirroring what's happening in Franklin. So I'm not sure why anyone would choose Nolensville over Franklin for the same money. But what do I know? Number 4 on that list, downtown Nashville, right? So we've got Nolensville at 1, Brentwood at 2, downtown Nashville at 4, Franklin all the way down at 5. How dare you? Number 7, Music Row. So I think we're going to leave it at that, y'all. Let's move on to the next topic of conversation here. I want to talk to you about the transit plan. So the mayor in Nashville is pushing a $3.1 billion transit plan, which, if I had to guess, is going to get approved. It's going to be financed with sales tax dollars, which is the right way to do it, right? So if you're going to do it, doing it with sales tax is the right way to do it, because that makes sure everyone pays it. Sales tax is the most fair tax because everyone has to pay it. No more freeloaders like we have with income tax, right? So with income tax, a small percentage of people pay the entire income tax. Half of the people in this country don't even pay a federal income tax, which is outrageous. So if you're gonna fund a transit plan, right, funding it with a sales tax is the right way to do it. Now, one can argue, once you've funded a transit fund, which Nashville is one of the few major cities that doesn't have a formal transit fund. So I would say, regardless of the details of the transit plan, one should approve a transit fund so you have money to improve the way that people move around the city, right? So one of the biggest complaints about Nashville is the difficulty getting around, and perhaps the cost of parking downtown, the quality of the roads. These are all transit issues. So I do think investing some money to improve our transit system in Nashville is the right thing to do. But we could certainly argue about how he's planning to do it. So the biggest thing he's planning to do is related to buses, right? So a bus-centric transit plan. So you're going to have 24/7 bus service, right? And you're going to have dedicated lanes for these new buses to run. And these lanes are going to be in the center, right? They're going to be bus-only lanes in the center of these major roads. And here are the major roads for you: Murfreesboro Pike to the airport, Dickerson Road, Gallatin Pike, Nolensville Road, and West End Avenue are going to have a dedicated center lane for buses so that the buses can get to places faster than a car can, right? That's the idea. My thinking on this is, who is riding the bus? I personally don't know anyone that rides a bus in Nashville. Is this really to cater to a lower income person that doesn't have a car? Is this to cater to somebody that is trying not to pay for parking downtown? They work downtown. They don't want to pay for parking downtown. I understand parking downtown is undesirable. If that's true, how are these people getting to the bus? Is the idea that they're living close to Murfreesboro Pike and walking there? Are they driving their car to Murfreesboro Pike, and then somehow we're going to offer like massive parking lots for them to park in? So they have to drive to a parking lot, park there, wait for the bus to pick them up, take the bus to the bus stop, walk from the bus stop to wherever it is they're going, and then do the whole thing in reverse. Because if you ask me, that sounds like a headache. I would pay for the convenience and the efficiency of just driving myself. If I'm going to get in my car and try to go to work, I'm just going to drive all the way there and eliminate all of the headaches. So, for me, a bus-centric transit plan, I don't understand. I'd like to speak with someone who doesn't use the bus now, but would start using the bus after this plan is implemented. And what is motivating you to do that? I mean, sounds to me like getting on a bus sounds like a very undesirable thing that you would only do if you had to do, like you didn't have any better option. So I'm not sure who this is catering to. If you've got any comments on that, and you want to reach out, please do, and I'll be happy to share your comments on the next show. They're adding 90 miles of sidewalks and or bike lanes. I'm into that. Sidewalks are very important. Bike lanes are cool. I'm okay with all of that. Is that going to make traffic in Nashville any better? No, it is not going to make traffic any different. So that's cool. 600 traffic signals are going to be upgraded, right? So make them smarter. So you're not just sitting at a light where, traffic isn't even moving. You're just sitting there waiting your turn like the nice little sheep that you are. 600 traffic signals upgraded could make a difference, right? So of all of the things that we've done here, it seems to me that upgrading the traffic signals is probably the best thing that is on this list so far. But again, what do I know? I live in Franklin and I drive everywhere where I want to go, so maybe I'm just not the guy to ask. Also, 12 transit centers that will each have a commercial real estate component involved, right? So kind of like government-led developments whereby you get on these buses. And then the other component to that is they're pushing for affordable housing, right? So affordable housing next to affordable transportation is the idea. What people have to realize when we're talking about affordable housing, it's really taxpayer subsidized housing where they are taking money from you, spending it on developing apartments, and then offering those apartments to people that qualify at a below market rate. So you are basically chipping in to pay the rent for people you don't even know, right? So if you think that's something that your money should be used for, perhaps you are into that idea. But 12 transit centers with a commercial real estate component led by affordable housing, aka taxpayer subsidized housing for people you don't know. That's what I've got to say for y'all on the transit plan. That is likely to change going forward, but that is a big, big price tag, y'all. $3.1 billion. I wonder if we couldn't just take that same money and make the existing roadways work better. I wonder if we couldn't take that money and add some turning lanes, if we couldn't add technology to more traffic signals. I wonder if we couldn't add roundabouts. I wonder if we couldn't widen roads, get more lanes, right? The thing with transit that you get all these climate people involved in transit, right? So it's not just trying to move people around the city better. They want to eliminate the vehicle, right? The gas-powered vehicle in an effort to advance their climate agenda, which is more of a religion than it is anything else. So when I see transit plans, I get a little bit suspicious, like, oh, is this the climate agenda religion mixed in here, or are we actually trying to improve transit for people? And if we are we taking taxpayers' money and investing it in the places with the highest return? Or is this more like a utopian thing where you just are imagining a different type of city and you want to spend other people's money to go after this utopian existence? We'll see. Like I said, if anybody has any thoughts, anybody out there listening that rides the bus or will start to ride the bus once they have a special dedicated bus lane, if you reach out and let me know your thoughts on what's motivating you to do that, that would be awesome. I'd be happy to share it with you on the show. Let's move back to commercial real estate, y'all. One of the largest lease deals in a decade was just signed, and it was signed with a very controversial business, TikTok, which is Chinese owned by a group called ByteDance, right? They just signed a lease for 144,000 square feet in the Moore building in Music Row, which is a like new building, 247,000 square feet, 15 stories tall. So they've taken multiple stories of the Moore building. They've been operating from a nearby WeWork And the part that makes this real interesting is the our federal government, in their infinite wisdom, has included in a ridiculous funding package where they take our tax dollars and send them to foreign countries. Oh, by the way, it's not our tax dollars, it's actually borrowed money. So we borrow money that we pay back with our tax dollars. And then after we borrow it, we send it to other countries to so they can have a better chance at winning their wars, right? Well, in this recent legislation, they included a stipulation that ByteDance must carve out its U.S. operation and sell it to a non-Chinese entity, right? And they've got 12 months to do it, or in theory, TikTok will be banned from the United States. So in the same week that they announced the largest lease in the last 10 years in Nashville, in the same exact week, they also announced that that legislation is getting pushed through our federal level. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. I'm sure it's going to end up in the courts, but perhaps they can find a reasonable solution and at least have some type of firewall between the U.S. operation of TikTok and the Chinese, which, maybe is not the worst thing that ever happened. Maybe you can figure that out. I hate the idea of in any way eliminating free speech amongst people. And TikTok is, perhaps one of the major services, at least for younger people, to at least speak freely to one another. I certainly don't let my children participate in TikTok. I don't think their intentions are good. I mean, if you look at the TikTok that is in China and the TikTok that is in the United States, they don't resemble each other at all. In China, the TikTok is healthy, uplifting, encouraging children to improve themselves, right? It's very much an educational tool almost, where you're encouraging people to become better people. In the United States, it's like nonsense, where it could be argued that it's the opposite, where you're trying to corrupt people, right? So improve people in China, corrupt people in the United States. And that's what kind of triggers people about TikTok. But I'm not a huge fan of censorship or telling people that they can't say what they want to say. Let's move into a little bit of politics, y'all. Trigger warning, politics. Tennessee recently passed a bill allowing teachers to carry firearms in classrooms. Into that, I'm going to do one of these. Let's go. Okay. So the next time a lunatic breaks into a school like they did at Covenant, a girl pretending to be a boy that's hopped up on I don't know how many SSRIs, I don't know how much testosterone, right? And has a desire to murder our children. I am hopeful there is a brave man or woman inside with a bullet for that person's brain. And I hope it happens so quickly that they have no chance to even harm a single hair on a child's head. I think this is absolutely wonderful. And this triggers the liberals amongst us. And I just don't understand. I don't understand how we cannot let reasonable, patriotic adults protect our children when they're not in our care. And if you have a problem with that, we're just different. Next, Tennessee also recently approved the death penalty as one option for convicted pedophiles. Into that, I say, let's go, Tennessee. Come on. Y'all are doing great. Keep it up. And anybody that wants to defend the rights of pedophiles, I just don't understand that either. The reality of the last 5 years, at least for me, has it has really cemented for me the idea that we are all inherently very different, right? When I was growing up, the idea was we're all the same, we're all Americans. Let's get along. Let's be a community. And if the last 5 years haven't shown you how different we all are, I don't know what is going to do it, right? Because anyone that doesn't want teachers to protect children when their parents aren't there to do it, mind you, this isn't happening to me. My kids are homeschooled, which is a topic for another day. But nevertheless, we had good friends in covenant that day. And it was a very, very scary day. It was hectic, and children were unaccounted for. And we assumed the worst because some transgender maniac, instead of going out and trying to at least murder people her own age, right, went out and tried to murder our babies. So if anybody has a problem with a teacher standing by with a bullet for that person's brain, we're just different, right? And anyone that wants to, in any way, make it seem as though it's okay to have a sexual attraction to a child, well, I think the death penalty is a real appropriate solution for pedophiles, And maybe before we get to the death penalty, maybe we try castration, right? Maybe at the minimum level, you get convicted of pedophilia. At minimum, you're castrated. At maximum, you're killed. I'm okay with that, Joe. I really am. Next, NPR is a woke joke and should receive no taxpayer money ever again. And this is coming from a guy who has personally donated to NPR over the years, mostly because NPR of the past was politically agnostic, right? But they really focused really well on local, right? A lot of local stories, a lot of local publications. And, I really thought that was worth supporting. So I was one of those guys where you give them your credit card and every month they take some money out of that account. So I am an NPR guy and have been forever. And I'm telling you right now, there's no way that taxpayers' money should be going to support NPR in any way. If they want to have such a skewed viewpoint, they should be able to go out into the marketplace and exist on their own without government subsidy or taxpayer subsidy. NPR is a woke joke, and that is a real sad thing for me to say. I am rooting for the demise of NPR, a group I once supported. I think they've gone too far, and I think it's time for them just to go compete in the private market and see if they can actually pull it off. Let's move to sports, y'all, and then we're gonna finish with, my favorite podcast episode of all time. All right. So this is going to be kind of a take for a casual sports fan, right? I'm not a super sports guy. I don't watch a lot of TV, but one of the sports that I've really gotten more involved in the later stages of life is soccer, right? So as a young man, I grew up in a small town in Iowa, and believe it or not, that town didn't even have soccer when I lived there. So I never aspired to play soccer. I never watched a minute of soccer until my daughter started to play soccer. And now I've got two daughters that play at an elite level. One of my daughters is flying to New York tomorrow, as a matter of fact, for a National League soccer game at age 12. She is in the top 10. She's on the top 10 team in the entire country, repping Nashville nationally, going out to take on first New York and then going down to Pittsburgh for a doubleheader. But Nashville SC, right? This is our local MLS soccer team. And when Nashville SC came to town, I was a season ticket holder, right? Giada's Park, very beautiful facility. They came out of the gate very strong. From inception, Nashville SC has been a very reputable, very strong team. I will tell you, going into this season, I gave up my season tickets mostly because my schedule, right? We just had a hard time getting there in a reasonable way, and we're always rushing and trying to force it. It just wasn't worth it anymore. Good thing I did, because Nashville SC is having a rough year. There are 15 teams in their division. They are number 14 out of 15 teams. In the last 8 games, they have won one game. 1 out of their last 8. They have 1 win, 4 draws. So if you're not familiar with soccer, is if the game is not in a tournament where a winner or loser has to be decided to determine who goes on to the next one, the game ends in a draw, right? So 1 win, 4 draws, 3 losses. That's pathetic, right? They have one of the best players in the entire MLS, Henny Mukhtar, who's a very good dude who my children have worked out with a number of times and know him personally. He's autographed 100 different things for them. Henny Mukhtar is a stud. The team is just brutal this year. Number 1 in the league, Inter Miami. Inter stands for International Miami. And the star player, of course, is Lionel Messi with their very, very fly pink uniforms, of which all my children have one. It has been a really epic fall from grace for Nashville SC this year. And if you want a hot take from a very casual fan, Gary Smith is on his way out, y'all. Gary Smith has taken the heat for the failure of Nashville SC. You know, the thing about Nashville SC is their strategy is that they're going to be very defensive focused, right? So they're going to hold other teams from scoring and hope that they can get a goal or two and win a 1-0 game, right? The problem with that is it hasn't been working. The second problem with that is it's not fun to watch. It's not entertaining. And at the end of the day, you know, people are buying tickets to Nashville SC games because they're hoping to be entertained. And even at the end of last season, when we still had season tickets, we'd go to games where they just never score a goal. You've got Handy Mukhtar on your team, a killer, the MVP of the league not long ago. And now we're 14 out of 15. So Gary Smith's on his way out, y'all. You heard it here first. Now, let's quickly move on to the NBA playoffs. So it is my guess that you all aren't following the NBA playoffs very closely. I certainly am not. NBA is one of those things where, you know, people kind of get serious about paying attention once it gets to playoff time. And the playoffs in the NBA take forever, right? So they started at the beginning of April, and they're not even going to get over till the end of June, right? So April, May, June, 3 months of NBA playoffs, and you wonder why people wait till the playoffs to pay attention. But what strikes me about the NBA is there are very new teams rising to the top. So some of these teams that have historically been dogs, right, who you wouldn't even watch if they gave you free tickets, are now top of the league. So let's talk about, I'm going to give you the matchups, right? So there are 8 different matchups right now. I'm going to give you each of the matchups so you can kind of start preparing yourself to pay attention to the NBA, right? Number 1, the best team in the league this year, the Boston Celtics, right? I don't think anybody's beaten Boston. If you're a betting man, my money's on Boston, okay? Boston versus the Miami Heat, right? The Miami Heat have historically been a powerhouse. This year, not so much. I think they had to win their play-in just to get involved in the regular playoffs. So there's like a play-in tournament just to get the last seed in the regular playoffs. Not exactly sure how it all works, but I'm pretty sure Miami, that's how they got it. Next, the New York Knickerbockers at number 2 playing the number 7 Philadelphia 76ers. The Knicks have been garbage for a long time. They're all the way up at number 2. Number 3, Milwaukee Bucks. Bucks have been good forever. I think Giannis, the Greek freak, is out, so they're in real trouble. They're playing number 6, the Indiana Pacers, who have been terrible for the longest time, but there they are. Number 4, Cleveland Cavaliers with our homegrown, my boy, Darius Garland, the point guard of the Cleveland Cavaliers, was a superstar at Brentwood Academy, right? Played 5 years, played as an 8th grader at Brentwood Academy, either won 3 or 4 straight titles at Brentwood Academy. Darius Garland was and is a stud. They are playing the number 5 Orlando Magic. Orlando Magic have been terrible. They had the number one pick just a couple years ago because they were the worst team in the league, all the way up to number 5. So I haven't seen them play, but they must be working hard. Let's go to the other side of the league. Number 1, get this. The Oklahoma City Thunder at number 1? Really? Who they got? They haven't got anybody. They haven't been good, rather, since they had Harden and Westbrook and Durant. I'm an old man. That was probably 10 years ago. I don't know how long that was. A long time ago. Versus number 8, New Orleans. Or as my buddy says, it's not New Orleans, Bo. It's Nolans. Nolans. You say so, dude. Number 2, Denver Nuggets. Don't be sleeping on Denver. They're real tough. They're going to take out the Lakers at number 7. Number 3, get this, Minnesota Timberwolves? Really? They've been trashed for a long time. But they've got some studs now. They're on their way up. Versus number 6, Phoenix, who on paper, it looks like they should be at the top. They've got D-Book. They've got Kevin Durant. D-Book, one of my favorite players. Anthony Edwards, really moving up the charts on my favorite players too. Very Jordan-like, Anthony Edwards. And lastly, the last matchup, number 4, the LA Clippers, who, in my opinion, very hard to like, versus number 5, Dallas Mavericks. I like everything about the Dallas Mavericks except their owner. Kyrie is my guy. Luka is my guy. So I'm still going to root for Dallas over the Clippers, even though their owner is insufferable. So the finals start June. The month of June is the finals. Until then, we're working to find out who's going to make it to the finals. So I've at least got you thinking about watching the NBA. And lastly, we're going to round out today's show with my all-time favorite podcast episode, a recent episode of Joe Rogan and Tucker Carlson. If you haven't listened to this, it is outstanding in terms of being entertaining, hearing things that you haven't heard before. I don't care if you agree with it all. This whole we're gonna censor and hate things that we don't agree with. Listen, open your mind to some things you haven't heard or thought about before, like I have. And I'll give you 2 examples, right? So Tucker Carlson is telling a story on this podcast that I've listened to twice already. He says, I've got this senior elected official in my kitchen very recently. He said it either from a senator or a House of Representatives, a very famous person whose name you would know. And he says, I'm telling you, at the very highest level of our government, people are compromised. They are captured by the intel agencies. They are scared to death that the intel agencies have dirt on them that they will use against them if they don't follow their marching orders, and or they will actually set them up so that they are able to blackmail them into the outcomes that they want. And putting kiddie porn on a computer was the example provided. How scary is that? People always talk about, it's the deep state is a conspiracy theory. Well, the deep state is nothing more than entrenched people in our government that don't change every time we have an election, right? And that absolutely is the CIA. That absolutely is the FBI. And if those people have convinced themselves that it is their responsibility to ensure the outcome that they think correct, regardless of what the voter wants, blackmailing people who are flawed in their nature, which is anybody that runs for government is a flawed person. Who would ever sign up for that? They have drug and alcohol problems that can be used against them. They are sexual deviants in many occasions. It can be set up and filmed and blackmailed with that so easily. Enter Jeffrey Epstein, enter Sean P. Diddy Combs, whereby they're having these crazy parties. They're getting people so loose, getting in compromising situations. They are recording it, and then they're using that as blackmail to get the outcomes they want. If you were in the CIA, what is easier than that? Having a blowout party, getting everybody high and drunk, setting them up in an inappropriate sexual encounter, and just clicking record. That is as easy as it could possibly get to get dirt on these important people. I guarantee that is happening. And what a scary thing it is. The idea of a representative government is we vote for who we want to go to Washington to be our voice, right? And if they get to Washington and are blackmailed by the deep state or the intel agencies, right? And they are making decisions based on saving their own skin, we have a real problem. And we're going to have to sort it out. I think the average person is kind of waking up to this problem. And one way or another, we're going to have to sort this out real soon, or this whole thing is going to come crashing down. The other thing that was mentioned that they talked about all kinds of crazy stuff. But the other thing I want to mention is, Joe brought up the idea of what are Tucker's beliefs on the alien phenomenon that has been discussed a lot, has been recorded. We have lots of evidence that these, what seems like foreign phenomenon exist, right? And Tucker had a response that I'd never heard before, that I'm still trying to wrap my mind around, suggesting that what we are mislabeling as aliens, right, are actually supernatural beings that have always been here, right? They've always been here, a spiritual, supernatural being that don't play by the rules of gravity and physics that humans do, and that they live under the water, right? And, I'm not doing it justice. And I'm not even telling you that I believe it. I'm telling you that it's very, very, very interesting. And, I like Tucker a lot. His argument is compelling. He's a spiritual person. And you just don't hear people talking much about, the possibility that there are things around us that cannot be explained by, the measurement that we have available to us, right? They're existing on a different plane of existence than we do. And, that's a pretty heavy thing to consider. So I did not do that justice, but what I wanted to do is at least pique your interest. If you've never listened to Joe Rogan's podcast, which is by far my favorite podcast, the Joe Rogan Tucker Carlson podcast is absolutely fire and worth a listen. So I'm going to sign off there, y'all. I appreciate you all tuning in for our first ever episode of Free Speech with Bo Beach. I promise you, as we get going, this is going to get more and more fun, more and more impressive. Stick along as we go. It's going to be a wild ride. See you next week.